10 years ago, I read a novel that has become one of my favorites. It's called Cave Dweller by Dorothy Allison. The main character, Sissy, moves from Los Angeles to small-town Georgia with her rock and roll singer mother, Delia, after her stepfather dies. For Sissy, it's someplace entirely new and foreign, but for her mother, it's returning home to her two older daughters and the place that she fled because of a bad first marriage. The book is the story of Sissy's journey to find herself and to navigate her very complicated family. As the title suggests, Sissy discovers that she loves exploring caves, and she ventures out often with her friends Jean and Mim. She feels safe and at home in the darkness of the cave, in a way that she doesn't in much the rest of her life. The caves are a place where she encounters the holy. Female, she thought, every time she tilted her head back into the chilly drafts that swept through the outer passages of the cave. The dark was female and God was dark. God was dangerous, big, frightening, mysterious, and female, and blasphemous. Every time Sissy put on her boots and old clothes for another trip into the cave, she felt the anticipation of another encounter with the mystery. In the dark, anything seemed possible. Anything could be born there. The cave was a dim, curving stage full of unseen motion. In that dark, Sissy was not Baptist or Pentecostal, but surely beloved of God. She was keenly attuned to the feel of the rocks in her hands and underneath her feet. When she lifted her head, she felt the breeze whisper past her cheek. She heard in the distance the steady sound of water dripping. She could taste the fear when the rope slid across the rock surface. The danger and the mystery permeated this cave. And whenever her friends Jean and Mim shouted to, or sometimes at, one another, the rock would reverberate and Sissy would straighten her body to take that shout into her belly, to let it shake her inside and out. The beloved of God would shout like that, she thought, unhesitating and unafraid. She felt the echoes resound even against her teeth. For the first time in her life, she did not feel alone. Now, have you ever had an experience like this? An embodied experience of the holy in which you felt each breath, each drip of water, each shout in your body? A time when you felt a heightened connection to your surroundings, where you felt spiritually alive, and it made you want to shout or say, wow, or perhaps whisper, hush, like in our reading. I have some memories of times like this. Sometimes when I finish a book or a movie that's really profound, I find myself sitting there taking it in for a moment and catching my breath from the long exhale of, wow. And I recall my experiences going to UU summer camp as a kid. Each night we'd gather at the campfire circle by the lake, looking at others through the haze of smoke and the bright crackling fire, listening to stories and singing songs together. There was the smell of the fire, of the trees, and of bug spray. I consider these holy moments because there was something going on, something beyond the mundane. There was a holy presence there. Now, typically the word or idea of holiness is associated with people or objects, like Peter Mayer writes in his song, Holy Now. When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Holiness is akin to wholeness. So a holy experience is an experience of wholeness. And Peter Mayer had a shift in his religious life, a realization that the kind of wholeness that he yearned for didn't live only in church. Whereas before he felt like he lived in a world half there, finding glimpses of the other half in church, his barely wet fingertips leaving him thirsty for more holy water. And yet everything is holy now, he sings. Holiness is described in many different ways, depending on your theology. Some call a holy moment one where the human and the divine meet. Reverend David Breeden, a leader in the Unitarian Universalist Humanist movement, says that holy is a place where and when the basics of human flourishing are realized. James Luther Adams, one of our most prominent theologians of the 20th century, wrote, "The holy thing in life is the participation in those processes that give body and form to universal justice." Reverend Bill Schultz says that the holy is embodied in the abundance of a scarred creation. Some say that the interdependent web of which we and all of creation are a part is holy, because it is an invisible wholeness that binds us all together. Schultz's words in particular remind me that holiness is possible even in the midst of a scarred creation, even in dark, dangerous places like caves. As Sissy found, in these places, anything is possible. The realization that everything is holy now and holiness is not tied to a place or a person is a liberating truth. And yet it might seem that ministers and leaders of churches would be threatened by this. If God is everywhere, why go to church at all? What is it about this place that is important? Why not spend Sunday morning praying by White Rock Lake, or breaking bread at a restaurant with friends, or singing your heart out in the car on the way to the blissfully empty grocery store? Why? Because this is a time and place set aside specifically for experiences of the holy, and for awakening ourselves to its presence within and around us. When we asked for your questions at the beginning of this summer for our worship series, one question that came up a couple times was, why do our ministers wear robes and stoles? What is their significance? I understand that some people feel robes and stoles are very formal, perhaps too formal for a church such as ours or our tradition. And not all ministers wear this kind of clergy garb, so why do we choose to? We have a lot of reasons. And some of them are the same reasons that doctors wear white coats. It identifies who we are and our role, and it's practical because there are pockets. It also covers up our regular clothes, and there are many reasons for wanting to do that. One of which is the sexualization that occurs particularly of young female ministers. If you're focusing on the color of my dress, or its fit, or its neckline, or how much of my arms are showing, or how beautiful my necklace is, chances are you're not focusing on what we're really here for. Ministers wear robes for the same reason I wore uniforms in elementary, middle, and high school, because it took the emphasis off of whether our clothes were cool or not, and put the emphasis on the reason that we were there, to learn. So I wear a robe because what we do here on Sunday morning in worship is really not about me. It's about us and the liturgy, or the work of the people that we're here to engage in. Robes do not make a minister holy. Rather, they help us all to focus on what is holy all around us by taking the focus off of me. And the stoles that we wear over our robes are the mantle of ministry. They are a reminder on our shoulders of our call and responsibility, not to be the holy one, but to lead this community of people to the holy. Church is a place where we pay attention to the holy in a way that we don't over brunch with friends or at a book club meeting. The Reverends Wayne Arneson and Kathleen Rollens, who will be our guests in this pulpit later this fall, wrote in a book together, "Worship is a human activity located at the crossroads, where the apprehension of the holy and the living of daily life meet." This gathering we call worship exists both in daily life and outside of it. And there's something rare and important that happens here in this community of people. In reflecting on the presence and location of the holy this week, I remembered the famous passage from Alice Walker's The Color Purple, in which Seeley and Shug are talking about God. This may be familiar. Shug says, "Seeley, tell the truth. Have you ever found God in church?" "I never did. I just found a bunch of folks hoping for him to show. Any God I ever felt in church, I brought in with me. And I think all the other folks did too. They come to church to share God, not find God." And this strikes me as very Unitarian Universalist in some ways. The idea that there is a spark of the holy in each of us, and we come together as a church to share it. And through sharing it, we find it. When we come together for worship where the sacred meets the mundane of life, we create a whole and holy experience unlike any other. As Jane Yolen writes in the poem that you heard Mickey read, "Someone's God has stepped here, slept here, knelt here, dwelt here, spoken here of life, of death, of holy things." How might we be with each other in new and more intentional ways if we thought of our time together like this? When you come, she says, come softly, walk softly, talk softly, be mindful of the dreams. This place as a building is not sacred. It is you who show up here and the gods who have dwelt here and the dreams that we dream here that make it so. Together we make a whole. Therefore, let us be with each other and act as if the holy is in us and manifested in the bonds between us. This is why the connections that we build outside of this sanctuary through learning and eating and serving together are not somehow unholy or less holy than what we do in this sanctuary. Let us build those bonds so that we can create more holy experiences, make possible more apprehensions of the holy, and make space for the miracle that happens when all of these souls meet in one place. Like Sissy in the cave, may you know in your belly and in your bones and even in your teeth that everything is holy now. In the light and the dark, underground in the cave and above ground in the light of the sun, in this sanctuary and in the classrooms, and in our bonds with one another, may it be so. Amen.